So why do you feel more alone after waking up? Why do crowds feel unbearable, conversations shallow, even the presence of others heavy? Why do people who once comforted you now leave you drained, agitated, or bored? Have you grown arrogant, or are you simply awakening to a deeper truth? You didn't choose to become distant. But now every interaction seems to demand a performance you no longer have the energy for. Smiling feels forced. Listening becomes exhausting. And pretending, unthinkable. You wonder, have I changed too much, or did I never belong in the first place? What if this exhaustion isn't rudeness or regression, but a signal? What if the tiredness is sacred, a symptom not of dysfunction, but of inner evolution? You're not imagining it. Awakening ruptures the old structures, including your ability to tolerate inauthenticity. The parts of you that once conformed, charmed, appeased, they're falling away. And what's left behind is raw, alert, and fiercely sensitive to falseness. But is everyone fake? Or are you projecting your disowned shadow, the parts of you you now judge in others? Are you truly done with connection? Or are you simply seeking a new kind, one rooted in truth, depth, and resonance? This weariness you feel is real, but it is not the end. It is the beginning of a new way of relating, one the false self cannot carry. You used to enjoy being around people. You laughed, nodded, played along. You knew your role, the helpful friend, the reliable sibling, the fun colleague. It wasn't always deep, but it worked. You knew how to belong. Then something shifted. After your awakening, whether through crisis, insight, or gradual disillusionment, the world began to look different. Louder, emptier, heavier. And the people in it, familiar faces, suddenly felt foreign. Conversations that once entertained now drain you. Invitations spark dread instead of excitement. You may ask yourself, am I depressed? Am I antisocial now? Why does even a simple message feel like an intrusion? Why do I recoil when others expect me to smile, perform, or reassure them? This is not a social phase. It's a psychic rupture, and it has a purpose. When you awaken, your inner frequency changes. You begin to see the unspoken contracts in relationships, the ways you used to hide your truth to keep the peace. You notice how much energy you spent managing other people's comfort. You recognize the subtle manipulation, the shallow exchanges, the pressure to stay on, and suddenly you're done. But the world isn't. People still want the old version of you, the agreeable, filtered, edited self. They haven't changed, you have. And that shift creates friction. You're not rejecting others out of cruelty. You're rejecting the mask, the performance, the lie. Still, there's danger here. In your fatigue, do you pull away from everyone, even those who might meet you differently? Do you isolate, not out of wisdom, but out of hurt? Are you truly setting boundaries or just retreating out of despair? This period is not about withdrawing from humanity. It's about no longer lying to belong. The old self, the socially conditioned persona, has collapsed. What comes next is not solitude for its own sake, but soul-led connection. Relationships not based on habit, but on resonance. You are not tired of people. You are tired of being someone you're not in order to keep them close. That's a sacred exhaustion. Now it's time to learn how to relate from the truth, not from the persona that awakening has burned away. When you feel tired of people after awakening, it is not simply a matter of introversion or burnout. It is the psychic expression of a deeper transformation that Jung called individuation, the process through which you become who you truly are. But to become whole, you must first dismantle the false. And in the social realm, that false self has a name, the persona. The persona is not inherently bad. It is necessary, a mask developed to interact with society, shaped by expectations, roles, and norms. You crafted this mask to survive, to be liked, to be employed, to avoid conflict. But the problem is, you forgot it was a mask. You believed you were the persona, and so did everyone else. Awakening shatters that illusion. The light that breaks through doesn't just illuminate it, it exposes. The jokes you told to seem relatable, the opinions you mirrored to maintain peace, the silence you swallowed to avoid rejection, all of it becomes unbearable. Not because people changed, but because you did. You can no longer lie to yourself about who you are, and the persona begins to fall apart. But this collapse creates a rupture, a space between the social self and the emerging self. And this space is lonely. Not because you are truly alone, but because the language you once used to connect no longer fits. Your old relationships built on performance or mutual denial begin to decay. You start to crave connection rooted in essence, not agreement, and few people are ready for that. At this stage, your psychic energy, what Jung called libido, redirects inward. You no longer feed it into social roles, external validation, or shallow interactions. Your energy returns to the inner world. Dreams intensify. Reflection deepens. Sensitivity sharpens. And with that inward turn comes exhaustion, because now every encounter must pass through your new heightened filter. Ask yourself, what part of me is resisting this inward pull? What fear arises when I stop performing? Do I still believe I must be useful to be loved? Am I willing to disappoint others in order to stay true to myself? As this inner process unfolds, another Jungian reality emerges, the shadow. Everything you rejected in yourself, neediness, envy, arrogance, superiority, emotional fragility, begins to appear projected onto others. Suddenly, you see people as fake needy, asleep, manipulative, toxic. But are they really? Or are they holding the mirror to the parts of you you've not yet owned? The more unconscious your shadow, the more likely you are to push people away. Not because they are harmful, but because they reveal your unfinished work. Jung warned that what you do not make conscious will rule your life. In social terms, that means you will unconsciously surround yourself with people who activate your unresolved patterns until you claim them. Another danger in this liminal phase is inflation. As you awaken, you may begin to believe you are more evolved than others. You speak of energy, depth, purpose, and they speak of weather, gossip, television. You feel superior but also disconnected. You begin to judge. You isolate, convinced that no one else gets it. But is that truth or ego in disguise? Inflation is seductive. It tells you that separation equals enlightenment. But Jung reminds us the goal of individuation is integration, not escape. You are not meant to transcend humanity. You are meant to embody it more fully. The self does not live in retreat. It lives in tension between inner truth and outer relationship. So when you feel tired of people, ask, what kind of people am I tired of? What parts of myself do they reflect? Am I seeking solitude as a sanctuary or as a shield? Am I rejecting connection or simply craving one rooted in soul, not survival? This fatigue is not a failure, it is a threshold. It marks the end of unconscious relating. But if you remain in the fatigue, if you stop here, you risk falling into alienation, spiritual bypass, or cynicism. The task is not to abandon others, but to rebuild your capacity to connect from essence. From a Jungian view, the next step is to consciously rebuild your persona, not to deceive, but to mediate. You must learn to move between the deep inner self and the external world with integrity. You must construct a new way of being in society, one that honors both your inner life and your social reality. The self does not fear the world, it enters it transformed. So yes, you feel tired of people. But more precisely, you feel tired of who you used to be around them. And now you are being called to something higher, to relate from presence, not performance, from truth, not tension, from soul, not survival. Ask again, am I truly tired of others or just tired of hiding who I am? And who are you now when you stop hiding? That question is no longer optional. It is your initiation. You wake up one morning and realize something has shifted, not in the world, but in you. The coffee tastes the same. The neighborhood sounds the same. But the way you move through it no longer fits. You scroll through your messages and feel dread. Group chats full of emojis, casual complaints, mindless updates. You used to enjoy these interactions. Now they feel like noise. You try to respond politely. You type a few words, delete them. Not because you're angry, but because you can no longer tolerate being inauthentic. You don't know how to speak without depth anymore. But you also fear that your depth will confuse or repel others. So you go quiet. You withdraw. Not out of arrogance, out of honesty. At work, small talk at the office feels suffocating. You nod at jokes you don't find funny. You feign interest in gossip that feels cruel. You want to scream, "Does no one else see how empty this is?" But you smile instead. You've played this role for years. You know the lines. But now your soul refuses to cooperate. You find yourself ducking invitations, dinners, parties, even casual meetups. You don't want to explain your new boundaries. You're not sure you even have the words for what you're going through. How do you tell someone you can't hang out because their energy leaves you numb? How do you admit that their presence no longer feels safe, not because of what they've done, but because of what you've outgrown? Your oldest friend calls. You hesitate before answering. You used to share everything. Now you feel like a ghost in the conversation. They're talking, but it's like you're not there. You notice how much of your friendship was built on mutual complaint, emotional dependency, or surface-level validation. You try to steer the conversation towards something real, something soul-touching, but they deflect, laugh it off, return to their script. And you feel it again. The psychic fatigue, the grief of disconnection. Is it them, or is it you? You start to wonder if you've become bitter, too sensitive, too intense. Are you becoming antisocial? Are you the problem? But deep down, you know the answer. You've changed. They haven't. And now the gap is impossible to ignore. You walk into a room full of people and instantly sense everything. Tension between two coworkers, a hidden sadness behind someone's smile, the unspoken pressure to perform. You used to navigate these dynamics with ease. Now you feel like you're drowning in psychic data. Why? Because awakening sharpens perception. You no longer interact from the surface. You see beneath. And it's exhausting. You visit family hoping for rest, but the roles are still active. You're expected to be cheerful, agreeable, emotionally available. You try for a while, then the silence sets in. You excuse yourself to the bathroom just to breathe. You stare in the mirror and think, how do I love them without lying to them? And then you meet someone new. They ask you what you do, what your plans are. You hesitate. The old answer is easy, your job title, your goals, your resume. But it doesn't feel true anymore. So you try something deeper. You speak from your heart. You mention soul work, inner change, the pain of transformation. They look confused. The energy drops. You feel exposed. So you retreat again. And yet you're not lonely in the traditional sense. You crave solitude. You long for silence, not to avoid people, but to recover from them. To recover from who you used to be with them. Still part of you wonders, is there anyone who sees the world the way I do now? Is there anyone I can talk to without translating my soul into small talk? You don't want everyone to understand, but you want someone who does. You're not looking for quantity anymore. You're looking for resonance. This is the typical experience of post-awakening social fatigue. It doesn't announce itself with drama. It seeps in quietly, day by day, as your nervous system rejects the artificial and your heart demands alignment. What used to pass for connection now feels like betrayal. What used to be comfort now feels like exile from yourself. But the danger is not in this fatigue. The danger is in what you do with it. Do you shut down completely? Do you isolate indefinitely, calling it boundaries when it's actually avoidance? Do you grow cynical, labeling everyone as unconscious to protect your own fragility? Or do you grieve the loss and let it cleanse you? Do you allow the old friendships to fade with grace, making space for the ones that haven't yet arrived? Do you build new relational muscles, ones that allow you to stay in truth, even when others aren't ready for it? Do you risk vulnerability again? Not to be accepted, but to remain whole. This is not a rejection of people. It is a rebirth of how you connect. You're not tired of humanity. You're tired of habitual relating. And that's a sign of growth, not collapse. You are shedding the social scripts you once used to survive. And now you are learning to speak from soul, even if no one claps, even if no one answers right away. So when you feel tired of people, ask, what am I tired of performing? What am I afraid to say? What kind of connection would actually nourish me now? Not the old me, but the real me. And then honor what arises. Because that fatigue isn't weakness, it's a compass. Follow it inward, and it will lead you not away from people, but toward the kind of relationship the truth can finally live in. You are not imagining your fatigue. But it's not about being too sensitive or too awakened for this world. What you're feeling is not personal, it's structural, psychic, archetypal. The exhaustion that comes after awakening has a mechanism behind it. And if you don't understand that mechanism, you risk misinterpreting your transformation as dysfunction. Let's begin with the collapse of the persona. Jung taught that the persona is the social mask you wear to interact with the world, a necessary interface between the private self and the collective. Before awakening, you unconsciously believed that mask was you. You played roles, the nice one, the smart one, the helpful one, the funny one. You said what was expected, performed in ways that earned safety, praise, and inclusion. But awakening disrupts the system. It reveals the mask. And when that mask starts to fall, so does your ability to perform. Your psychic energy, once invested in the maintenance of the persona, begins to retreat. You find yourself unable to push through or fake it the way you used to. Have you noticed how difficult it has become to even pretend? That's not laziness, that's ego death in motion. This is the first mechanism, libidinal withdrawal. Jung defined libido as psychic energy, the life force of the soul. When you awaken, your libido detaches from external approval and shifts inward. It stops flowing into roles and starts flowing into reflection, inner work, and soul development. This reallocation of energy makes socializing feel draining. Not because people are bad, but because you no longer have surplus energy to waste on the false. The second mechanism is nervous system rewiring. Awakening often awakens sensitivity. You start noticing what you previously numbed: subtle emotional manipulation, performative niceties, unspoken competition, psychic noise. These things used to pass under your radar. Now they overwhelm your nervous system. You feel crowded, overstimulated, and raw. Do you wonder why you can't tolerate what you once brushed off? You're not weaker, you're more attuned, and attunement requires boundaries. The third mechanism is shadow projection. As you shed the persona, the disowned parts of your psyche begin to surface. The shadow, all the qualities you once rejected, denied, or buried, doesn't just show up in you, it shows up in others. You find yourself irritated, triggered, or repulsed by people who represent your unintegrated traits. Loud personalities, needy behavior, dishonesty, spiritual bypass all become intolerable. But ask yourself, is this really about them? Or are they mirrors showing you what you haven't yet made peace with inside yourself? This is not a call to shame. It's a call to responsibility. Until you make the shadow conscious, you will keep misreading fatigue as a social problem when it is in fact an inner one. You're not tired of people, you're tired of the unclaimed parts of yourself they unconsciously activate. Now comes a more dangerous mechanism: ego inflation. After awakening, especially in the early stages, there is often a subtle superiority that creeps in. You start to see yourself as more conscious, more awake, more evolved. You speak in deeper language, engage in higher pursuits, and quickly grow impatient with the ordinary. Conversations about TV shows, work drama, surface-level dreams, they feel empty. But be careful, this isn't just discernment. It might be inflation, the ego's attempt to reassert its specialness in a more spiritual form. Inflation alienates. It creates distance disguised as elevation. Jung warned that inflation is one of the greatest risks on the path of individuation. So when you feel above others, pause. Ask, am I truly awake or just afraid of being seen as ordinary now that I've let go of the roles that once defined me? Another mechanism is relational grief. What no one tells you about awakening is that it doesn't just enlighten, it ends things. It ends friendships that no longer fit. It ends the ways you've been loved for being useful, agreeable, small. It ends unconscious connection. And every ending brings grief. The tiredness you feel isn't just depletion, it's mourning. You're mourning the loss of who you were and who others were to you. Have you made space to grieve? Or are you trying to skip to empowerment without honoring what's been lost? And finally, there is the integration crisis. Once you see clearly, you must rebuild. The old mask is gone, but the new way of relating hasn't yet formed. You no longer know how to be with others, not in the old way, but not yet in the new way either. This in-between, what Jung called the transcendent function, is psychologically disorienting. You feel suspended between isolation and connection, and that liminal space is tiring. You ask yourself, how do I speak truth without offending? How do I relate without pretending? How do I belong without betraying myself? These questions don't drain you because you're weak. They drain you because they matter. Because answering them means building a new foundation for your entire relational life. So what's really happening when you feel tired of people? Your psyche is reconfiguring itself. Your shadow is knocking on the door. Your nervous system is pleading for honesty. Your soul is asking you to rebuild connection, not from performance, but from essence. This fatigue isn't something to fix, it's something to understand. Once you see it clearly, it stops feeling like a defect and starts becoming a map, a sacred map toward truer connection, one that your old self could never walk. But now, maybe you can. Now that you understand the why behind your exhaustion, the question becomes, what do you do with it? How do you live in this post-awakening landscape without becoming cynical, isolated, or inflated? How do you honor your fatigue without using it as a shield? How do you rebuild your relational life from the ground up without losing yourself again? The first step is simple but not easy. Claim your solitude consciously. Don't treat your need for space as a problem. Stop apologizing for your silence. You are not broken because you prefer stillness now. You are integrating. Let yourself be alone on purpose, not by default. Can you spend time with yourself without reaching for a distraction, a justification, or someone else's energy? Make solitude a sacred space, not an escape, but a temple. Let it teach you what kind of presence you want to bring into the world. Because until you're willing to sit in your own truth without an audience, every connection will be another performance. Next, practice relational fasting. For a short period, choose not to engage in habitual conversations. No forced check-ins. No "how are you" out of politeness. Let the unnecessary fall away, and watch what rises in its place. What kind of connection do you actually crave? Who do you miss and why? Which relationships still nourish you without requiring self-erasure? This is not about cutting people off. It's about detoxing your relational field. Once you stop saying yes out of guilt or habit, the right connections will reveal themselves. Now comes the deeper work. Rebuild your persona consciously. Remember, the persona isn't evil, it's necessary. You still need a face to meet the world with. But now it must be built with awareness. Not a mask to hide behind, but a window through which your essence can shine. Ask yourself, what parts of myself do I want to share with the world? What's authentic and sustainable? What tone of voice, language, presence actually feels like me? And when I notice myself slipping into old roles, can I pause and begin again? The goal is not total exposure. Boundaries still matter. But your persona must now be in service to yourself, not to social survival. To deepen this process, map your social shadow. Write down the people who trigger you most. Then write what you judge in them. Are they needy, arrogant, superficial? Then ask, where does that live in me? Where have I been needy and silenced it? Where have I felt superior and buried it in shame? The shadow doesn't just live in you. It hides in your reactions to others. Shadow integration isn't theoretical. It's practical. Next time someone irritates you, stop before retreating. Ask, what does this person reveal about me? What part of myself am I avoiding by blaming them? And can you stay in the conversation, not to fix them, but to meet yourself? Also, relearn how to speak. When you do connect, drop the performance. Begin small. Speak plainly. Tell the truth even when it's awkward. Practice saying, I don't know how to respond to that. I feel disconnected right now. Can we talk about something deeper? These are not rejections. They are invitations. Speak from essence, even if your voice shakes. And remember, authenticity isn't intensity. It's honesty. Not every conversation needs to be soul-shattering, but every conversation can be honest. And that's the shift from drama to depth, from masks to meaning. Another tool, create threshold rituals. Before socializing, ground yourself. Remind yourself of your values. Set a simple intention. May I be real and kind. After socializing, reflect. Did I stay true? Did I leave myself? Where did I speak from soul, and where did I perform? Treat social fatigue like energetic feedback, not something to ignore or fix, but something to study. Lastly, cultivate resonance before re-engagement. Don't rush to rebuild your social circle. Instead, begin creating the kind of presence you want to attract. Read things that nourish you. Listen to voices that mirror your growth. Follow the subtle pull toward aligned energy. And when someone shows up who meets you in truth, stay. Not because they complete you, but because they recognize you. Let connection be a mirror, not a crutch. Ask yourself now, where am I still pretending in order to be accepted? Who drains me, and why have I tolerated it? Who nourishes me, and how can I show up more fully with them? What would it mean to belong without performing? Jung wrote that individuation demands the courage to separate, but also the wisdom to return. Not return to the lie, but return to relationship with integrity. To step back into the world not as a persona, but as a self, with boundaries, shadow, and soul intact. So take the space you need. Grieve the connections you've outgrown. Honor the fatigue. But don't stop there. Use it. Let this tiredness burn off what was never yours to carry, and carve room for something holy to enter. Not isolation, not superiority, but presence. Not many, just real. You are not tired of people, you are tired of pretending. You are not broken, you are between selves. You are not meant to walk away from humanity forever. You are meant to return to it reformed. This fatigue is not a flaw. It is your soul's refusal to betray itself again. It is the psychic immune system rejecting false connection, and it is sacred. But be careful. Exhaustion can become exile. Discernment can harden into distance. Grief can turn into defense. Have you turned your awakening into a wall? Are you mistaking inflation for intuition? Are you guarding your truth or hiding inside it? Jung's path was not escape, it was integration. Individuation does not end with solitude. It begins there. But its destination is participation, in life, in relationship, in community. You are not meant to dissolve into the void. You are meant to stand in the world as someone whole. So, what now? Begin again. Speak plainly. Love carefully. Let people in, not everyone, but someone. Test the world with your truth. Let fatigue guide you to deeper alignment, not total withdrawal. Ask yourself now, what version of me do I refuse to wear again? What kind of connection do I now require to stay honest? Where can I practice returning not to the crowd, but to the soul of real relationship? Your tiredness is not the end of intimacy. It is its purification. Follow it. Let it strip you of the false until only the true remains, and with it, the courage to connect without compromise.